marks the 80th anniversary of the outbreak of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which was one of the leading examples of remarkable Jewish courage that emboldened Jews across occupied Poland and elsewhere to also fight for their lives. Joining us now are the grandchildren of several Warsaw Ghetto heroes. Eyal Zuckerman, whose grandmother Tzivia Lubetkin, and her grandfather, Antek Zuckerman, commanded the Jewish fighters, and Nir Yaari, who is the grandson of a fighter, Bela Yaari. Just before we hear about what you have to share, let's watch a brief documentary that will momentarily take us all back in time to hear about the battle from the ghetto heroes themselves, thanks to the miracle of AI technology created by the Israeli startup company DID.
In the summer of 1942, the mass deportation from Warsaw Ghetto began. 265,000 Jews were sent to the Treblinka death camp, to their extinction. Only 60,000 Jews remained. In the Warsaw Ghetto, two underground organizations were emerging at the same time. It was on the 19th of April, 1943, the first night of Passover, that marks the formal start of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Against thousands of marching Nazi German soldiers, 700 young Jewish men and women stood strong, without almost any weapons or experience in warfare. This heroic story will now be shared in their own words. The day before the outbreak of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the square and the streets of the ghetto were empty and abandoned. People preparing to go underground, fighters to their battle positions and outposts. We were to cause the enemy a heavy loss.
When the day dawned, I saw the thousands of Germans surrounding the ghetto with machine guns, with cannons, and there we stood opposite them, some 20 young men and women. Each one had a revolver. The entire unit had 2 rifles, homemade bombs.
Beginning from today, we shall shift over to partisan tactics. It is impossible to describe the conditions under which the Jews of the ghetto are now living. Only a few will be able to hold out.
I detonated the explosives. I was shocked into inaction after the massive explosion and German bodies flying in the air. This was the first time since the war had broken out that the Germans were running away.
The Germans fled twice from the ghetto. One of our military wings fought for 40 minutes, and the other for over 6 hours.
The Germans set fire to the ghetto. Our hidden locations were blown up, and we were forced to leave our bunkers.
Their fate is decided. In almost all the hiding places in which thousands are concealing themselves, it is not possible to light a candle for lack of air.
We decided that night to send a group into the sewer channels. I went as well. We walked for 48 hours.
We opened the hole and people began to emerge and to climb into the truck. We brought this group of about 50, 60 people to a different forest that was very far away.
The rebellion lasted for about a month, until the Warsaw Ghetto was completely wiped out. Most of the Jews were killed during battle or taken to their deaths in Treblinka. Only a small minority managed to escape and survive. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising became a source of inspiration for millions of Jews in the ghettos, the camps, and the forests who were still fighting for their lives.
The dream of my life has become a reality. Jewish armed resistance and revenge are facts. I have been a witness to the magnificent, heroic fighting of Jewish men in battle.
Our fight will not be forgotten. We will live in the pages of Jewish history. the future children in the land of Israel will learn about us, and we will be their example of courage.
Eyal, what was it like to grow up next to two such giants who were legendary heroes, not only during the Second World War, but also during the rebirth of the State of Israel? Do you feel like you carry this legacy with you?
Well, my grandparents used to say that they're not heroes or leaders. They are just ordinary people who did what they had to do in light of the circumstances. And I'd like to add that I think they did what they had to do because of their values and ideology. So for me, this is their legacy, and this is what I try to embed in my life, the values that they carried when the circumstances, thank God, are quite different.
Now, during the Holocaust overall, and the underground in particular, there really was complete equality between the men and the women. Female heroines fought shoulder to shoulder alongside their male counterparts against the Nazi forces and their collaborators by smuggling weapons and also disseminating information about what was happening in Poland. Let's now watch another brief documentary that relates to the experiences of two female couriers, Chava Pullman-Raban and Hella Rufeisen, who are part of the network in which near your own grandmother belonged.
The story of the Jewish woman will be a glorious page in the history of Jewry during the present war, for these girls are indefatigable. Emanuel Ringelblum, Ghetto Warsaw historian. With Nazi Germany taking over Poland, there were endless restrictions on where Jews were allowed to travel. In order to move between ghettos, Jewish youth movements created a network of female couriers. These incredibly brave young women and teenagers traveled the roads under false identities. They transferred information, saved lives, and hid money and weapons on their bodies. There wasn't a corner in occupied Poland where Jews lived that the couriers did not reach. They served as the lifeline between Jewish communities in war-torn Europe. Each and every move they made could have resulted in their deaths. These are the stories of two brave couriers in their own words. I, Hella Batsheva Rufeisen, was the courier between the Krakow ghetto and the Warsaw ghetto. I transferred documents, and I managed to smuggle weapons successfully. I hid guns under my clothes, within a stomach belt. Explosive materials I put in my travel bag, under my garments and dirty clothes. Even though I was scared and suffered from stomach pains from the fear, I was successful. It's hard to describe the happiness I was welcomed with when I reached my destinations. When I would return to Krakow with my packages, the men would caress the guns I brought over and count the bullets. From all the excitement, they couldn't finish counting the bullets. They knew they would not defeat the murderous Germans, and they would not achieve sufficient revenge, but it was the beginning of something.
I set out on my mission and found myself among strangers, with no one familiar. I was even isolated within myself. I had trained myself to project strength towards the railway guards and even towards Germans. One of my roles as a courier was to pass through various areas that had no clue of what was going on and tell people who were disconnected or not involved, listen, they will eventually make their way here and will kill everyone. Do something, hide, hand over your children, dig within the ground. We needed to pull the Jewish out of their delusions that everything was normal.
The stories of these couriers are ones of utmost bravery, a story of courage and female fighters on the front lines. Women who could have saved themselves, but chose to risk their lives over and over again for the greater good. Most of the couriers were caught by the Germans and executed. Only a few survived.
Nir, your grandmother, Bella Yaari, as we mentioned, was a courier in the underground, and as we just heard, she personally risked her life on a daily basis to help save her friends. Can you tell us a bit more about her and what you know about her heroic actions? And they're very heroic to most of us.
Well, she didn't talk too much about her story, aside of writing a book when she arrived in Israel after the war. But now, these days, my family is investigating her story, and we discover on a daily basis more and more lives that she saved during the war. And she did smuggle guns, and she used, until the very last day of the war, when she got out of Leipzig, she saved so many lives of Jews and Poles.
You must be really proud, and you as well. In fact, Eyal, do you think that the history regarding the memory of the Holocaust in any way fails to do enough justice to the Jewish fighters, that their incredible accomplishments and their heroism in some sense has not been fully appreciated or acknowledged?
I think we can do a better job respecting survivors, especially the living ones, and also respecting heroism without classifying who is more of a hero. I think a mother hiding her child is a hero. A father getting on the train thinking it will help his family survive is a hero. Resistance anywhere, trying to survive is heroism, and I think we should not judge or classify. I think we cannot understand what happened, and we should just respect it and appreciate it.
Very good point. Now, Nir, your grandmother was a prisoner here in this very camp where we are sitting today. How do you feel about being here today telling her story? And do you see yourself as someone who can pass hers and other people's experiences on to future generations?
So my grandmother was here for about 2.5 years of hell, and being here, I am extremely inspired about her story and about the story of the people who've been here during the war, and to telling the story for future generations is tough as time goes by, and we are already almost 90 years after the war, but that's a challenge that I hope I can do. And I feel extremely important, that it is extremely important to do this task.
How did she manage to survive for 2.5 years in Auschwitz-Birkenau?
She was disguised as a Polish woman. She had fake documents, so even when she arrived, they didn't know that she's Jewish.
For the entire time she was here?
For the entire war, in fact, and it saved her life.
One would think absolutely. Can you tell us more about the fate of your grandmother, your grandparents?
Well, when the Warsaw Uprising broke, my grandmother was inside the ghetto leading a squad of fighters. My grandfather was on the outside of the ghetto, so he was making the efforts to try to bring out the survivors and the Jews that were left within the ghetto outside as fast as possible. Also
Very
organizing the escape through the sewage.
Very valiant, very heroic. Eyal Zuckerman, Nir Yaari, thank you so much for being here with us today and helping to share the legacy of your very valiant families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.